Thank you for clicking on this video, and today what I'm going to share with you is how to use Firestore in your Flutter Web project. I have with me a Flutter Web project that you can follow along in this tutorial. At the end of this tutorial, you're able to add a diary entry. So I'm going to add an emoji, and then I'm going to put in the title as subscribe. Don't know what that is. And then at the same time, you're gonna put in a whole lot of text, and it's successfully added. And now I'm going to edit, which you are going to be able to do. I'm changing the title to share and also changing it to an angry emoji, and click on update, and it updates successfully. And now I'm going to delete as well. So I'm going to just click on the delete button, and then there is no more angry diary entry. The link of the worksheet can be found in the link in the description below. Don't forget to give me a star for this worksheet. You can give it a try before starting. So let's get started. So make sure you have your Flutter Web diary project or worksheet open. So let's search the first to-do. Alright, so I have a couple of to-dos that I've created inside the Flutter Web diary project. And the first one is the import the Firebase Firestore package in index.html file and pubspec. So let's click on it. We have to import the Firebase and Firestore package in index.html file and pubspec. So we are going to refer to this firebase.flutter.dev link over here. So let's go over to this website. So as you can see here, this is the firebase.flutter.dev website, or you call it the Flutter Fire documentation. So the first thing is, let's get started over here. And inside the Flutter Fire overview, it says that, and you have some prerequisites. So you need a Flutter project, and then at the same time, you need a Firebase project. So I'm going to go through the Firebase project later on in this tutorial. So let's go down, and under the installation header over here, you need to add in the Firebase core. So let's copy this line over here, and then let's go back to our VS Code and go to the pubspec.yaml file. So under our pubspec.yaml file, let's add in the Firebase core right under our provider dependency over here. So let's save this. And let's go back to the documentation. So once we are done with this, let's scroll all the way down to see what's next. So we already have installed the plugin. Let's go down, and under the platform setup, you could see there is a different installation, but we are doing a Flutter Web project. So that means we only need the web installation. So you can either command or control click to open this link in a new tab. So once it is open, you could see the web installation. So let's scroll all the way down. So a little warning. So for the support for web in Flutter Fire, it's a little limited, but don't worry, Firestore is supported. So let's scroll all the way down. And then we need to add this Firebase SDK. We need to add the Firebase SDK inside our index.html file or our web index.html file. However, I would not recommend you to copy this line because this seems a little outdated. So what you can do is you can go to your Firebase console. Make sure you have a Firebase project that you want to connect to the Flutter Web Diary project. If you don't have any project, make sure you create one. I'm going to use the test Haris 1234. So make sure inside your project you have a web app inside. So if you don't have a web app over here like this, what you can do is you can click on this add app and then hover over this web, and then just go through the different steps to create the web application. So once you have a web app, you need to go to the settings of the web app that you have created inside your Firebase project. So click on this gear icon. Then if you were to scroll all the way down, you could see the Firebase SDK snippet or CDN over here. So we require the script tag that is getting the Firebase app JavaScript library. And then at the same time, we need the Firebase configuration as well. So we can just click on this copy icon over here. And then this means that it has been copied to our clipboard. And let's go back to our index.html file. And then let's open up index.html file. And then if you were to scroll all the way down, you could see there is a to-do 0.1 over here. So under this comments, we can add in a new line and then we can paste it as such. So let's save this so that it auto formats. We now have initialized Firebase in our Flutter Web project with the script text that we have copied and pasted over here. However, we are missing one thing. Do you know what we are missing? We have a Firebase app library, but do we have a Firebase Firestore library? Therefore, we need to download the Firestore library as well. So let's go back to the Flutter Fire documentation. If we were to go back to the web installation, we already have added our Firebase SDK as well as our Firebase config. So once complete, so let's go back to the Flutter Fire documentation that we were initially in before we initialize the Flutter Fire. So let's go to the left tab over here, and if you were to scroll all the way down, you could see Cloud Firestore. Let's click on the overview. So under the Cloud Firestore, let's scroll all the way down, and we are required to add the dependency of the Cloud Firestore. So we can copy this whole line of code with the version number, and then let's go back to our pubspec YAML file, and then we can paste it just right underneath our Firebase core. So now let's save this. Once it finished downloading, let's go back to the documentation, and then if you were to scroll all the way down, you could see that after we download the dependency, we will need to add the SDK for the web only inside our index.html file. So you can see here the script tag over here, it is almost the same version as our Firebase app script tag or JS library as well. So let's go back to our index.html file. So inside our index.html file, so if you were to see here, there is a comment that says if you want to use any Firebase products, maybe such as Firestore, then we can go to this website to see the latest version. We can go to this website, so command click it, and then right under available Firebase JS SDK from CDN, let's click on it. And then under the Cloud Firestore, you could see this whole script tag for the Firebase Firestore JS or JavaScript library. So we can copy this, and let's go back to our index.html file. And then we can paste it over here. So normally what I want is to have the same version for my Firebase app and also my Firebase Firestore. So 0 sounds good to me. If there is a number, I would rather put the number as well. So let's save this. And now we have Firestore inside our index.html file and also our pubspec file. So let's go back to the Flutter Fire documentation to finish initializing our Firebase inside our Flutter Web project. So once we are done with this, then the next step is let's go back to the getting started overview over here. And then if you were to scroll all the way down till you see initialize Flutter Fire, we need to have this inside our Flutter project. So they already have created an example app inside our main.dart to initialize Firebase. What we can do is that we can just copy this whole line of code. So you can just copy this. So inside this example over here, we need to have a Firebase initialize app function that is a future. So if it's a future, you will require a future builder. So it takes in the initialization future inside the future parameters. Then in the builder, then it's going to check for 3 different cases. So the first case is that if a snapshot has an error, then we will return a widget to show that there is an error. If the snapshot connection state is done, then it will return our Flutter Web diary app. And lastly, if it's loading, then we will just return a loading widget. Alright, so that's just a simple summary of what we have copied. Then let's go back to our main.dart file in our VS Code. And then what we can do is we can just highlight the void main and then we can paste it as such. Let's scroll all the way up, and then we don't need this duplicate import. So remove this flutter material.dart library, and then we have already imported the Firebase core library. Let's scroll all the way down till we see the app stateless widget. So currently we don't have these 3 widgets. So we are going to replace this first widget that shows if there's any error. So what we are going to replace is a text widget, and the text widget is going to take in the snapshot dot error. So we want to make it a dot string. So at least we have some error message inside our text widget. The next thing is that if the snapshot connection state is done, then we are going to replace my awesome app with a normal my app. So you can just highlight awesome and you can remove it. Oh no, it's not awesome anymore. And lastly, we have the loading widget. So what the loading widget is just an indicator to show that it's loading. So we can just return a circular progress indicator. And there we have it. Now we have successfully created a widget that helps us load the Firebase initialization. So let's save this. And now it's time to run in the debug session. Alright, if we have loaded this website, that means the Firebase and Firestore dependency is working. So let's go back to our VS Code. And now we are done with our first to-do. So we can just remove this. Alright, let's see the next to-do, which is to-do number 1. So let's create the add method to add a diary entry to the Firestore when diary action.add. So let's click on this. And we are now inside the diary entry button file. So let's close the problems tab. So if you were to go back to the browser, you could see there is this add to do over here. So if you were to click on this, this is where we are going to add our diary entry. So we will just have a simple emoji and then with a simple title and a simple body as such. And then if you were to click submit, then we will actually add the diary entry over here. So where can you find the diary entry button? So if you were to click on this plus button over here, you could see the submit button over here. So this is the diary entry button.dart file. So after we click it, we should actually add our new diary entry that we have typed in here. So let's go back to our VS Code. Now let's look through the diary entry button.dart file. So under our diary entry button widget, it is a stateless widget that has a text editing controller that's the title controller. So the title controller controls the title of the diary entry. Next, we have the body text controller, which is also another text editing controller, which controls the body text of the diary entry. And lastly, we have the emoji. This is where if you were to go to the Flutter Web diary, if I click on the add emoji over here, you could see that it opens up a drop-down menu for the different emojis. So let's go back to VS Code. And lastly, we have this diary entry page widget. So I will explain this diary entry page widget in the later part of this video. So now to add a document to the Firestore collection, we have to write Firebase, Firestore, and then a .instance, and then we are going to call the collection method. So the collection method is where we are going to call for the collection that we have inside our Firestore database. We're going to name this collection called diaries. Just a rule of thumb, naming of collection is plural as it reflects the collection of the document type. Under my collection diaries, my documents will be a single diary document. So now we have the reference of the diary collection. We're going to use the add method over here. So the add method, if you were to see, it requires us to have a map string dynamic type data. So let's put the semicolon over here. So instead of actually manually putting in the map string as such, what we can do is something safer. So we can use the diary entry model. So let's go to the diary entry model. And if you were to scroll all the way up, we can use this diary entry model object over here to help us convert it into a map so that it is safer. So let's add a method called toMap. So let's create a function and let's name it as toMap. And then for our arguments, it is empty. And then for our return type, we're going to return a map string, dynamic. And then lastly, inside the function body or the method body, we are going to return a map. Let me put a semicolon over here. So inside this map, we will have the different fields that has already been created for us. So what we can do is we can multi-select, you can hold down alternate, and then you can click on the 3 fields that we have created. And then once it is one single line over here, you can hold alternate again, and then press shift to highlight all of this tree, copy this, and then go back to this map over here and paste it as such. And then we are going to multi-select all of them again and highlight all of them and make them into a string. Then at the same time, let's put in a colon and then let's paste the fields as such with a comma. And now let's save this, and now we have the toMap method. So let's go back to the diary entry button, just right under this onPressed function over here. So we're going to create a variable called diary entry map. So we know that this is a map. And then we're going to create a new instance of the diary entry object. So we will choose this diary entry, and then we're going to type the first one, title, and this will refer to the title controller text getter method. The next field is body. So let me put a comma. Then we're going to put in the body text controller dot text. Let me put a semicolon. And lastly, we are going to assign the emoji field to the emoji variable over here. And this diary entry map is currently a diary entry object. So now we're going to turn it into a map using the method that we have created earlier. So type in dot to map. Now if you were to have a diary entry map, you could see the map string dynamic type over here. So that means we can use this variable inside our add method over here. So you can remove the map or the curly brackets and paste the diary entry map. So make sure you save in both files, so you can press Command or Control Alternate S to save in all files. So let's go to our Flutter Web and let's see if this Firestore add method works. So now let's go to the add emoji. Let's click happy and then let's type in happy, and then let's tell my diary what happened. I am happy. Let's submit. Alright, so it actually works. Not over here, but inside our Firestore database. So let's go to our Firebase console. And then right in our cloud Firestore over here, you could see the collection diaries have been created with a document ID that's randomly generated for us. And then you could see that our body, emoji, and title has been created inside our Firestore. Great! That means we are done with our second to-do. Alright, we are done with our to-do number 1. Now we are going to go to the to-do number 2. So to-do number 2 leads us to the main.dart file. And the instructions for it is to create a diary stream to return the list of diary instance. So currently we have a list of one diary entry that is hard-coded for us. And now what we are going to do is we are going to create a stream that is calling from the Firestore database, specifically the diaries collection. So let's create a variable. So let's just remove all of this and type in diary collection. And let's type in Firebase Firestore.instance. And then this will refer to the collection reference of the diaries. Alright, so let's end it with a semicolon. Once that is done, we are going to convert this diary collection to a stream that returns a list of diary entry, because currently our provider only needs a list of diary entry. Let's create a final variable called a diary stream. And for a diary collection, let's type in diary collection. And for a Firestore collection to return a stream, we need to use this method called snapshots. So what snapshot returns is a stream of query snapshot. So in order for us to make this stream of query snapshot into a stream of the data that we need to use the .map method. So this will look through in the different snapshots of our diary collection. So instead of the name event, we're going to put the name snapshot because we are mapping in a single snapshot. And then we're going to convert this expression body into a block body. Let's put in a semicolon. And then we are going to return the snapshot. And inside this snapshot, there is this thing called docs. So this docs refers to the list of all the documents inside the snapshot. So it is a getter method. And then for this list of docs, we're going to use the map method. And then instead of the letter E, we're going to refer to a single doc. And then let's return this doc over here. And let's see what function it returns to get our data. If you think it's data, then it is correct. you could see that the data over here contains all the data of a document snapshot. Alright, so if we were to hover over the diary stream over here, it returns a stream of iterable map string dynamic. So we got a stream correct. Now we don't want an iterable, but we want a list. So what we can do is that at the end of this whole return statement, we can actually put the .toList method over here. So if we were to hover over this diary stream, instead of iterable, it actually returns a stream of list. The next thing is we want to convert this map string dynamic into a diary entry. So if we were to go to the diary entry over here, you can command or control click on this diary entry word. You could see that we have created a method that converts the diary entry object into a map object using the toMap method over here. Can it work the other way by having a map into an object? Yes, it is possible. So we are going to use this thing called a factory constructor. What a factory constructor is a function that returns an instance of a class, which is what we wanted. So once we have typed in factory, we can type in the word diary entry or the class itself, and then we're going to say from map, and then we are going to put the normal argument and curly brackets. And then for this from map, we are going to use an argument, which is the map string dynamic. So you can copy this and then we can paste it over here. And then we're going to name our argument as map. And then inside our function body, what we're going to do is we're going to return a diary entry, and then let's put in a semicolon at the same time. So what we can do is we can multi-select by holding alternate and then holding title and holding body, and then we can highlight all of them by alternate shift and command copy, and then now we are going to paste it as such. So we are going to multi-select the body, title and our emoji, and then we're going to put a colon and a comma. Then we are going to type in the word map, and then we're going to put a square brackets that will refer to the map string dynamic, and then we are going to refer to the key of each individual field, so emoji, title and body. So let's save this, and under our main.dart file, so instead of returning the map string dynamic, we can convert it into a diary entry object. What you can do is you can press space, type in diary entry, and then you're going to call the .from map method. What you can do is you can highlight this doc data over here with the colon, copy, remove, and then we can swap the map into the doc data over here. And now you can see the diary stream is now returning a stream, which is a list of a diary entry. So that means we have created a stream for the list of diaries. Now the next to do, which is just right below, is to change this provider into a stream provider. So what we can do is we can just type in the word stream, and now for this create, it requires a stream of a list of diary entry. So that means we can use this diary stream variable that we have created over here, copy, and then we can swap the diary entries variable that we have created earlier and paste it over here. And now if we were to save this, let's see how it looks like inside our web browser. So now you could see the diary entry that you have created, the happy I am happy over here. If you were to create another diary entry, and let's create a diary entry that's called sad life, and then we were to click on the submit, you could see that the new diary entry has been reflected in our Flutter Web page. Excellent. So let's remove these to-dos over here. Let's save this. And now let's see under our problems what we are left with. So the next to do is to create an update method to edit diary entry to Firestore when diary action edit with doc ID. Basically, we need a Firestore update method using the document ID. Before we add the Firestore update method, I will explain to you, if you were to scroll all the way up, the diary entry page widget means. So this refers to the previous widget. If you click on this diary entry page, it refers to the diary action and the diary entry over here. So diary action is actually, if you were to click on it, it is actually an enum that has been created for us over here. So it has edit, add and read. So let's scroll all the way up. And then inside our diary entry page, we also have a diary entry object. So let's go back to our diary entry button. We can close this. So this widget has two things, a diary action and the diary entry object. So now you see this final is add action. This is a conditional statement to see whether our diary action is an add action. So we can use this is add action to control whether we are updating or adding the diary entry. So let's create a if statement over here, and then we are just going to copy this is add action and paste it inside the conditional statement over here. And now inside our if statement, we are just going to move this add method inside it. So this means that if this is an add action, then we will use the Firestore add method. Else, we are going to update it. So for this diary entry button, it's only being used inside the add and update user flow. So now we're going to create the update method. So what you can do is you can copy this line and then you can paste it over here. Now we are going to refer to the diary collection. Instead of adding, we are going to refer to a document. So you can press dot and then type in doc. You can see that a doc is a method over here. And then for this doc, instead of adding, we are going to update. So now if you were to hover over the doc over here, you can see that it is referring to a document reference and it has an optional string path over here. So this refers to the unique ID of a document. So in order for us to update an existing document, we need its ID. So how do we then get the ID for this document? If we were to go to main.dart file, and then under this doc over here, you could see that if I were to just, remove the doc data function over here, and then I will just put the word ID, you could see that every query document snapshot, it has an ID. So how are we then going to put this doc ID inside our diary entry from map method? Well, we're going to change this from map into a from document. So let's go to the diary entry model over here, and then instead of a from map, we're going to say from doc. And then let's go back to main.dart file, and then we hover over the doc over here, and this refers to the type query document snapshot. So highlight it and copy this, and let's go back to the diary entry model over here, and then we're going to highlight the map string dynamic, and then we're going to paste the query document snapshot. This type will allow us to get the ID from the document that we are passing it inside the argument. So instead of the word map, we can just replace it to the word doc. Then we are just going to highlight the different doc, and then we are going to type in dot data with the function over here. Now this will work. At the same time, we want the document ID. So for a diary entry, it should have a ID field. So let's scroll all the way up, and then we are going to create a ID field. And the ID field should be a string type. So let's duplicate it by pressing alternate shift down arrow key. So this just duplicate a line, and then we're going to replace the word body to the word ID. And then let's go down to this dot body and do the duplication as well, and then replace the word body to ID. And let's scroll all the way down under our factory constructor over here, type in ID, and then this is going to refer to the doc ID that we have over here. So now we can reference this doc ID using the ID field of the diary entry. So let's go back to the main.dart file. Now there is no from map method. We're going to put a new method called from doc. And then for the from doc, it requires a query document snapshot instead of a map string dynamic. So we can remove the data function over here. And now you could see that it still returns a list of diary entry. So now let's save in all files. And then let's go back to the diary entry button.dart file over here. So now we are able to get the ID of a diary entry. So what we can do is, so we can make use of the widget of the diary entry page. So we can just copy this word widget. And then we can create a variable called ID. So type in final ID, and then we're going to paste the word widget dot diary entry dot ID. And then we're going to just put in the word ID inside the document method over here. And then we're going to paste this as such. And now if we were to save this, let's go back to our web browser to see if it works. So instead of a set live, we are going to edit it. So click on this show menu over here, and then click on this word edit. And now instead of the angry sad face, we're going to put in the angry face. we are going to rename the title as angry, and then we are going to do the same thing with our sad over here. So we're going to replace it as angry. And now you can see the word update over here. Let's click on it, and then it has successfully updated our sad life into an angry life. Alright, so now it works. We can remove this to do as well, and now we are left with one more. So let's look up to our last to do. So our last to do is a create delete method with the doc ID. So let's go to the web browser, and now if you were to open up this menu and the drop down menu over here, if you were to click on these three dots, this will open up a drop down menu, and then you can see this delete option. Click on it. You can see that it opens a dialog to say that whether you are sure to delete this diary entry, and then if you are sure that you want to delete it, you'll probably click on this delete button. And what we will expect once we click on this delete button is that the selected diary entry will be deleted and will be removed from this home page. So let's go to our VS Code. So if you were to click on this to do, then it will redirect you to this pop-up menu over here. So there is a method that shows the delete dialog. This is where we're going to create a Firestore delete method with the document ID. So inside this pop-up menu.dart file, we actually have a diary entry object over here. If you were to remember correctly, we have an ID property inside our diary entry over here as such. So let's scroll all the way down, and let's go back to our diary entry button over here. And what we are going to do is we're going to copy the Firebase instance update method over here, but not the update method, but just the collection with the document ID. And then let's go back to the pop-up menu.dart file, and then let's create a new line just right under our to-do and paste it over here. Now we can just import it over here. So the ID is undefined, but it is right under the diary entry inside this widgets over here. And then we are going to put the semicolon. So this has a ID of a specific diary entry. And then we're going to use this method called delete. And then what delete does is just it removes the current document from the collection. So let's save this and let's go to our web browser to see if it works. And now we are going to click on the menu of the angry diary entry, and then we're going to click on delete. Let's see if it works. If we click on delete, congratulations, the delete method works. We have come to the end of this tutorial. So what we have learned so far is that we were able to set up Firebase and Firestore in our Flutter Web project, create a Firestore method, update method, and also the delete method. And lastly, we know how to convert streams into Dart objects and using Stream Provider. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe down below. And comment down what other Flutter or Dart concepts you want me to go through. Stay safe and all the best. Bye bye.